This week on the Hollywood and Toto podcast, we give last rites to Saturday Night Live on the eve of its 50th season. It's quite an accomplishment, and boy, have they trashed their legacy. We'll explain. And we talked to Kyle Mann. He's the editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee. Funny guy, great website, and now they've gone Hollywood. They've got a new movie about the January 6th insurrection, the worst day of the world, or, as they call it, the most deadliest day. We'll explain.
Welcome to the Hollywood and Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
Well, I've got your ear. I hope you'll subscribe to the Hollywood and Toto podcast. We are on YouTube, iTunes, Rumble, all the places you hear a podcast, and we'll probably expand to more places you see a podcast in the future. But for now, you can check it out on multiple platforms. We do appreciate your support. And a quick shout out to my young son, Elijah. He's been working with me on Short on Hollywood. It's my new series. It's kind of a snarky Hollywood Minute-esque tribute that looks at Hollywood from a right-of-center perspective, like the show, with a bit of funny mixed in. Mick Jagger's girlfriend, Melanie Hamrick, says she doesn't think about the couple's 44-year age gap. She had to cut the interview short when her Bose Life Alert bracelet went off. Get a chance, check it out. It is on the short section of my YouTube channel. And I'm having a blast with it. The jokes are silly. The jokes are political at times. The jokes are necessary, I'd say, just because the mainstream media just won't tell these jokes. But I do hope you check it out. Give it a try. We all need to laugh, and boy, does Hollywood give us enough material to make us laugh and laugh for a very long time. Well, one of the hackiest headlines you'd see in the media over the years was Saturday Night Dead. And they would report that when the show hit a rough patch, or if the new cast didn't quite gel as quickly or as with such an impact as the previous cast members, or maybe a few weeks with a few really awful sketches came along and coaxed those headlines out of the journalists. And I get it. It's easy, fair game. And the show really has had a kind of a hit or miss strategy behind almost every season. It's just the hits outweigh the misses, and that's what matters. That's what we care about. But now it's not like the show is dead. It's just propaganda. And if you've seen any of the recent seasons, you know why. You know, a few years back, Jay Farrow, who played Obama on the show, said they kind of gave up on the Obama thing, which was such a revealing, telling anecdote to share about not just his role in the show, but also how the show viewed Obama. And in case if you've forgotten, Saturday Night Live literally serenaded President Obama as he left office with a rendition of To Sir with Love. And if that wasn't bad enough, remember how they treated the loss of Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump in 2016. They had Kate McKinnon play Leonard Cohen's great song, Hallelujah, as sort of an ode, an homage, a goodbye to the Hillary Clinton campaign, and a somber note for a comedy show. Yeah.
Maybe I've been here before. I've seen this room and I've walked this floor. I used to live alone before I knew you.
Yeah. They've really just absolutely lost it when it comes to political satire. It's hopelessly one-sided. You know, it's funny, Lorne Michaels and Michael Shea were recently talking about the show's political aspirations with either Variety or the Hollywood Reporter, one of the main industry rags. And they just flat out denied it. They denied they have a bias. They say, well, we're speaking truth to power. And the magazine's interviewer actually asked Shea about a joke aimed at Biden. Was one of the rare moments where they really did zero in on his inability to connect with Black audiences in general. And they asked about the reaction to it. I'm thinking, so they found the one joke that was really critical of Biden over the last 3 years, and they formed it as a question, and they had to interrogate this particular performer about it. I mean, it just is so obvious what's going on. And how dare you tell a joke about the guy who's in the White House? I think there's a few jokes you can say about the guy in the White House right now. They don't tell any of them, and you all know what I'm talking about. So here we are. Saturday Night Live is celebrating its 50th season. It's an amazing milestone. Hollywood is a brutal industry. Anything that can survive that long, you have to kind of tip your hat. But it ain't SNL. It's not what it used to be. It's a far cry. Now, in a way, you get that. It's counterculture TV. How long can you fight the culture? How long can you be rebellious or irreverent? It's extremely hard. Just ask Howard Stern how that feels. So I get that the show can't be as outrageous and bawdy and crazy and innovative as it once was. It's just very hard to almost impossible. But what the show has become is just pure propaganda for the left. It's just the truth. So rather than get into that too deeply, I just want to mention a couple of names of other comic satirists who are working right now, who aren't falling into the SNL trap, and who are worth your time because they tell good, funny jokes. And their political satire is not only on the mark, it's funny and it's truthful. And that truth is the elixir behind political satire. If you don't have truth, you don't have the funny. But these particular individuals, they bring it. First one up is Tim Dillon. He is a reverend. He's got a show on Netflix coming very soon. And he's got the Dillon Show podcast, which is a great, almost like an old Howard Stern before he actually went woke and lost his cool, lost his edge, lost just about everything. Tim Dillon is maybe right of center if you want to pigeonhole him, but certainly not beholden to either party, tells it like it is, makes fun of Trump, makes fun of Kamala Harris, just is someone who is irreverent and bright and bold and looking to kind of appear into directions that aren't being investigated by other comics. Good for him. Of course, there's also Ryan Long from the Boys Cast. It's a great show, comes out each Friday. And he doesn't do a lot of political humor, but when he does it, it does have the sting of truth to it, which is what matters. He, of course, is absolutely ferocious against the woke mind virus. He does that early and often. But just in general, when the show does veer into the political lane, it's worth listening to. It's funny. It's interesting. It's challenging. It's unpredictable. And I think that's maybe the worst sin that you could say about SNL in the 2024 season. You know exactly what the jokes are going to be. You may not know line by line what will be said, but you know the angle, the direction, the take. Way too predictable. Comedy and predictability, they just don't go hand in hand. It's not like peas and carrots, as our friend Forrest Gump might say. You've got to keep us on edge. You've got to make us feel a sense of surprise, a sense of uneasiness, maybe even a little bit of awkwardness as well, or a sense of discomfort with comedy. That's where the best jokes come from. Saturday Night Live does none of that. Just don't, if you want it, you are not going to see it. That's why I'm recommending these other figures. And the last one I'll mention is Andrew Schultz, another rebel comedian, someone who's breaking the mold, just telling jokes the way he sees them, not beholden to the left or the right. Again, I don't even know where he leans, if he does lean at all. I think he leans in the direction of funny. And funny is his North Star. That's what these comedians have in common. They're all hysterical. They're all irreverent. They're all trying to find the best joke possible. And of course, like SNL, sometimes they swing and miss. Can't always hit 100%. Just not the way comedy works. But boy, if you're sick of SNL, if you're sick of the predictability, if you want to see a fresh take on political satire, that's where you go. You go to YouTube, you check out your local comedy club, you check out all the different places like podcasts where you can hear this kind of humor. Saturday Night Live, it's not cutting edge. It's bloated. It's predictable. It's a waste of our time. And it's so sad. I grew up on the show. I remember waking up as a kid on a Saturday night, hoping I could keep my eyes open till 11:30. Of course, this was before DVRs and TiVo and all the different ways we can watch technology and shows now. I miss that time. It can't be replicated. I get that. But boy, they could give it the old college try. Instead, they don't even lift a finger. They're just following the blueprint, preaching to the choir, same old progressive jokes week after week. So SNL is back this weekend. I couldn't be less excited, and I suspect you feel the same. God bless the Babylon Bee. And I'm not saying that because it is a Christian-centered satire site. They just deliver the best fake news around. And they do more than that these days. They've got a podcast. They do a lot of great videos on YouTube, sketches, the kind that SNL might have done years ago, but now they're They're too afraid. They did a great sketch about squatters recently. That was wonderful.
Kayla and Crackhead Steve are squatters. Their budget is $0.
I'm looking for something open concept with maybe some wood paneling.
Well,
A pool would be.
if it's cutting edge, if it's funny, if it's irreverent, it's on the B. That's where you go. Go to babylonb.com for just about everything in the way of humor these days. And of course, that now includes a feature film. And the film is a mockumentary. It's called January 6th, The Most Deadliest Day. It's a film that looks at that day from a satirical lens. Now,
Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the heat death of the universe. These are some of the deadliest days in history. But none of them compare to the most deadliest day, January 6th.
lens. Now, again, I don't think anyone is saying that was a good day. It was an awful day. It was a gross day. But what we've seen over the last couple of years is that magnified into this violent insurrection. The country was teetering on the edge of collapse. It was the worst thing since Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Bull, absolute bull. And what a wonderful place for a humorist to enter the conversation and really upend these narratives, which have just had a chokehold on us for the last couple of years. That's what the Babylon Bee does. Now, I have not seen the movie. I want to kind of caution you first, but I've seen a few clips. I know what the Babylon Bee is capable of. I know what Kyle Mann, the editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee, can do given a little bit of resources. So I'm anxiously looking forward to it. The film comes out October 11th, and it's going to be behind the Babylon Bee paywall, but subscribe. You get lots of good stuff. And of course, you're going to get that movie as well. I'm sure it'll be well worth your investment. And of course, you want to support a great platform like the Babylon Bee because the powers that be want it shut down. We've seen fact checkers over the last 8 or 9 years attempt to fact check satirical news stories that are obviously fake and obviously very funny. So why would they want to fact check it? Well, if you fact check it, it might tell Facebook or other platforms, you want to maybe demonetize that. You want to diminish that on people's feeds because it's not really true. They're punishing it because they know the power of great satire. It leaves a mark. It leaves a message. It changes hearts and minds. It's what Kyle Mann and company do all the time. Their humor is so on the mark. It's so funny. It's so necessary. So that's why I'm so glad to speak to Kyle Mann about the new movie, about the Bee, about his approach to satire. What does he think about it, the work he does? He probably pinches himself daily thinking how lucky he is to just crack wise for a living and have it have such an influence on the culture because, trust me, it does. Everybody's sharing the Babylon Bee stories, myself included. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Kyle Mann, editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee. Definitely check out January 6th, The Most Deadliest Day, and see what you think of the chat. Well, Kyle, thanks for joining the show. You know, you're editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee, but you wear a lot of hats. You're in the sketches. You're now in a new movie, which we'll get to in a minute. I'm sure you're doing some editing, some writing as well. Give us a little day in the life of Kyle at the Bee. Is every day different? What's going on there behind the scenes?
It is surreal. You know, I was just talking to Seth, our CEO, and I said, our lives are surreal. You know, we talk very like mundanely about things that that are just insane when you think about them. You know, the different people that we're working with, the different people we're talking to, the conversations that we're having. You know, it's like we're very humbled and honored to have the position and the whatever, you know, influence a little satire site has. Yeah, the day in the life is like it's just playing in the playground. You know, we get to write jokes and film videos and make movies and like just, you know, I write jokes for a living. It's unreal. And I get paid like actual real money for it. I think it's real money. It's worked so far.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, like yesterday, you know, Gavin Newsom signed that law that was saying, you know, you can't release AI powered satire videos. And in the morning, we're like, hey, we should just make one. You know, an AI generated video about Gavin Newsom. So we did, and a couple hours later it was out, and you know, all of a sudden Elon Musk is sharing it, and all these people are sharing it, and it's got 20 million views on Twitter. You're just like, this is wild. Like what? You know, we're having so much fun, honestly, joking around with. That's what everybody always wants to know is, you know, what's it like joking around in the writers' room? And you can't imagine a funnier group of people. So
Well,
it's a lot
you
of fun.
mentioned early in your description the influence you have, and I think that's one of the key reasons why we see very little good satirical comedy in 2024, because I think a lot of comedians worry about their influence. If they tell the wrong jokes, if they target the
Hmm.
wrong pundit or politician, there could be some response to it, some backlash, some traction, some buzz. How much does that weigh on what you do, or does it at all?
Yeah, you can't go into it really worrying about that, right? Or else
Mhm.
you're going to lose your satirical edge. And there's a lot of truth to that now that the establishment are the ones that have run the comedy world and the entertainment world for years. The left has had this stranglehold on comedy, and all of a sudden that's starting to crumble because conservatives are the ones who don't care anymore. Conservatives are now the outcasts and the ones who are making good comedy because of that. The left always talks about how like comedy's not supposed to punch down and it has to be written on the fringes and making fun of, the tower, the citadel at the middle that holds all the power,
Mhm.
and yet they're the ones who hold all that power. Like they hold all the cultural power and right now all the political power, and so we're the ones that are kind of sitting on the outskirts. The court jester, the kid who's pointing out that the emperor has no clothes. And
Mhm.
that's a very fun position to be in. We're having a lot of fun doing that for sure.
Now it seems like making a movie is the natural step for the B. Obviously, great online stories. You've got the sketches, the podcast as well. Now you've got, which I believe is your first feature film, January 6th, the most deadliest day. Uh, what was the impetus behind it? Can you just give us a quick origin story there? Then we'll get into more detailed questions.
Yeah, we've been very interested in making, film and TV for a long time, and obviously that's the number one question that people always um, have for us is when are you going to make a movie? Like when's the Babylon going to do the Babylon B movie? When are you going to have your own TV show? When are you going to do your own version of Saturday Night Live? That's the comment we get most often in anything, and it's like, well, we got to figure out some way to dip our toes in the water. We kind of break the seal there
Mhm.
and spearhead something to get in there. And we've had conversations about it since the View was founded 8 years ago. We had people approaching us with scripts or wanting to distribute something, but we always felt that a Babylon B movie had to come from us. Like we didn't want to just slap our logo on something. So I ended up writing a script at the time, and I mean even more relevant today, pretty much. The media fervor around January 6th was such a huge thing that was going around. So it's making fun of the media seemed to be the appropriate way to go. And this is a very fun topic for us, and a fun tone, and doing a satirical documentary. I don't even know if anything like this has been made before, like the kind of satirical documentary that we're doing, but it's such a great fit for the bees. So yeah, that's kind of why we jumped into it, and we're hoping to be able to have a little bit of that influence on culture and maybe change some minds with this thing.
I think one of the things that you have in your favor is you're really working without a net. You're not in the corporate stratosphere. You're not mainstream. You're not having to avoid offending X, Y, or Z. It seems like a very liberating place to be. Is there actually almost a downside in that there's almost too much content or too many directions? It's almost like when you're in high school and your teacher says, write about anything. And you go, oh my gosh, anything. I freeze up now. It's like, I want a guardrail or two. What's it like as a comedy writer right now, just given the landscape?
Yeah, you really nailed it. Like we were more paralyzed by the opportunities than we were by like not having enough opportunities. So it's a good problem to have, but it's almost equally paralyzing.
Yeah.
You know, we could, as the Babylon Bee, like we could pretty much pursue anything we wanted, and we're independent and we're subscriber funded, and we can do whatever we want. So that's I find in comedy a lot of times if you have a restriction that really guides the process a lot more, because you have to write this. You're like, okay, I can write within those boundaries. But if you don't have any guidelines, you're just sandbox, do whatever you want. It takes real creative effort to kind of kill 1,000 good ideas to give birth to the one great idea. So yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like those opportunities were paralyzing in a lot of ways.
Back in the day, Howard Stern had a lot of restrictions on what he did, and I would argue maybe that was some of his best work at the time. But obviously, there's great advantage to having that blank canvas. Now, you mentioned you're making fun of the media here, and I'm sure there's other targets too. Drill down into that. What does that mean for the layman who maybe has believed what they've seen in the press? What are you poking fun of here? Just to those who maybe say, "Well, it's January 6th. You can't make fun of that." You are, and it's funny. Give us an example or two of what you're targeting.
Yeah, anytime you tell a comedian you can't make fun of that, like a good comedian is like, okay, that's what I'm going to make fun of. Which is why I think the right's so good at comedy these days, are getting so much better at comedy, is because we're being told you can't make fun of this, you can't make fun of that. Well, January 6th to us is so interesting, and it was almost a difficult thing to do, but at the same time super easy, because it was like, obviously, a lot of us, we have various political opinions in the B, but a lot of us think January 6th wasn't a great day. It's like it's a little embarrassing in some ways, and you look at some of the excesses of some of the protesters, and you're like, that was probably a little too far. But at the same time, the way the media treated these people, and the way the media speaks about this day, is so insane, that it just almost made it hard to parody, to write something more. We couldn't write satire that was funnier than like what Kamala Harris actually said about January 6th. And then, like, as we're finishing the movie, we keep having to stop and re-edit it because some politician or some journalist says something even stupider about January 6th, and we got to figure out some way to get into the movie. And then you look at the political persecution of a lot of the people on January 6th. Mm-hmm. And what we find is, like, as we talk about it, and we're writing jokes about it in the movie, and kind of the point that the movie makes through satire is, like, a lot of these people were treated in such a terrible way. Mm-hmm. And then you compare and contrast with the way people were treated for the BLM riots in 2020, and, like, literally the vice president of the United States bailed them out, compared with people being held in solitary confinement for a year, for walking into a restricted area. So a lot of us wouldn't have had a problem with even-handed prosecution of people who did break laws, but at the same time, there was this huge blanket prosecution of anybody, and the kind of passion with which the FBI and all these investigators went after them was crazy. So we expose a lot of that in the movie, and the angles kind of, I'm an idiot journalist. In the movie, I'm a smart person in real life, but I play an idiot journalist, and we actually interview people that were prosecuted for January 6th. And I'm treating them like they're the scariest people in the world, and they're coming off in the interviews like, oh yeah, I just walked in and walked out, So it's a very fun way to make that point, I think.
When you look at what conservatives have to their advantage right now, there's two things. One is a target-rich environment that the mainstream won't touch, which is like subject like this, but also the truth is on their side as well. And I think what you're pointing out with this mockumentary is that there were people really treated badly, and the punishment hardly fits the crime. Can you talk about that as a satirist, sort of making sure there's truth embedded in the joke, because otherwise it doesn't really fly?
Yeah, well, that's why leftist comedy has fallen so flat recently. You're looking at it like, what are you even talking about? I don't know. Mm-hmm. I think, I don't want to pick on fellow comedians or anything, but you look at, like, some of the Onion headlines recently, and you're like, are you living in an alternate reality, than than everybody else is? Mm-hmm. They made a joke about the guy, or about the guy who got killed at the Trump rally during the attempted assassination, and, like, oh, if you go to a Trump rally, you're going to leave in a body bag, ha ha ha. Like, what is this, like, what joke are you communicating there? And obviously a lot of that's based on this misinformation that they're sharing on the left, that, oh, this is probably a fake assassination, or, Trump set this all up, or like, it's based on those kinds of assumptions, which is just wild. But you're right. I mean, like, comedy, especially, cutting satire, has to have an element of truth. And that's the comment we get under all our articles, right? It's funny because it's true.
Yeah. And by the way, you talk about punching down. I think making fun of a man who shielded his family from bullets and died in the process, that might be the ultimate punching down. But I don't see any outcry about that particular onion gag, and I did see that and brought some attention to it at my site. It's pretty despicable. And
Well, and
listen,
it's not like as a comedian, like it's what Jerry Seinfeld says when Bryan Cranston's character converts to Judaism for the jokes. It's like, it doesn't offend me as a Jew; it offends me as a comedian. You know, like it's like I am so callous to jokes because I swim in them and breathe in them, and we'll publish a joke everybody gets upset at, and I'm like, why are you guys upset about this? You know, or whatever. So it's not that the joke triggers me or anything like that. It's just like staring at it confused, like,
yeah,
you guys thought this was funny? I don't get it.
yeah, just a bad joke. You mentioned your team has been really pining to do a film for a while, and it had to be the right one, it had to be organic. Well, here we are. It'll be out shortly. Do you exit the project itching for more? Do you think you'd go in different directions? How do you emerge from a project like this? Is it sort of the fires are burning now, or what's your take?
We're such spazzes. Like, I'm I don't know if you're supposed to say that anymore, but I like you're before a project is done, I'm already like, oh, you know what we should do next.
Mm-hmm.
It drives everybody crazy because they're like, we still have to edit this. Like, we still have all this work to do on this. And I'm like, no, here's the next one. And I'm already like over it. I'm already working on the next thing, So it's very exciting to get one out the door, because then you're like, okay, now we've got the formula. Let's do the next one. And so, yeah, hundreds of ideas. We just have to narrow it down. But yeah, we're very excited, and we think the Babylon Bee can be a huge force in film and TV over the next decade.
There's been a lot of talk about free speech and censorship, and the Babylon Bee has really been at the forefront of a lot of it. And every time I read an interview or hear you on different platforms, you kind of have a glass half full approach. It gives us more attention. We get more subscribers. And I understand that, and it's admirable, but I'm scared by it at the same time. And I imagine part of you is as well. What's your take on censorship at this moment? We're seeing pretty outrageous stuff happening in England. You mentioned the Governor Newsom decree about satire. I don't know. I'm a pretty optimistic soul, but there are times I wake up at night a little bit afraid of what's coming. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's like, obviously the political landscape could really shift in a very bad way. Got Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris talking about how they want to censor misinformation. It's like, what? This is crazy. And how like hate speech isn't covered by the First Amendment. Like, just like, this is wild. And, you talked about England, obviously. I don't know. Like, as a Christian, I have hope in the future because I know how the story ends, and I know that God's in control, and I know that we win. So I more think about, like, the Lord of the Rings Gandalf philosophy of, like, I've been put here in this moment, and all I can do is what I've been given, what to do with the time that has been given to us. Like, that's all I can concern myself with. So I don't really concern myself with the grand scope of history, the grand sweep of history, what things are going to be like in 100 years or 200 years. Like, that's God's business. My business is to do the right thing in this moment. And I think that empowers comedy, because you don't have to worry about things. You don't have to, you can write jokes that bring people hope and make fun of the political situation instead of freaking out about it. We have people that tell us they read the Babylon Bee to get their news because it's a much more hopeful way to get the news. You don't have to stress out about it so much, right? So so I'm hopeful, even though I don't know how it's gonna end up. And I think you have to have that hope to write good comedy.
Yeah. When I look at the comedy scene and satire right now, I'll look at the Babylon Bee, I look at Ryan Long, Tim Dillon, Andrew Schultz, and I never go to the mainstream. And I think at some point, isn't the mainstream going to wake up and think we're losing all the eyeballs and clicks and views and viewership from these rebels? We got to fight, or got to join them in a sense. And I think Netflix is doing that a little way with having people like that on their platform. Do you think there's going to be a moment where the mainstream realizes how far behind they've gotten, that they're losing huge swaths of audience? Or do you think that this almost kind of parallel economy just continues for the foreseeable future?
I'm not sure where it's going to go. I mean, on the one hand, you have, you have the fact that the people on the left that control these distribution outlets are politically and ideologically motivated. It's their religion. It's what they believe. They're going to keep putting woke stuff in movies and TV shows because that's their, proselytizing. That's how they convert people. They don't care if it flops and loses hundreds of millions of dollars, or the Acolyte gets canceled after one season and then they just announce the next crazy thing, or because to them it's a religion and a philosophy. In the same way as Christians, like, we wouldn't compromise our beliefs even if it was not popular in the public square. They think the same thing about their religion.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, I don't know that will change many minds, but the people who hold the purse strings, or whatever the phrase is, like, those people those people might start to think about it. And I do think there is this, there's an unspoken assumption in Hollywood, like, oh, nobody will make conservative content or nobody will touch that stuff. But I think there are a lot of people in Hollywood that would. Mm-hmm. Like, if you could do the first thing that made $200 million or whatever for Hollywood, their eyes would open the same way that it did for Christian content. Like, when God's Not Dead got made, they were like, oh, Christians will go to the movies, even for a bad movie. Like, they'll go for a movie that's semi-competently made because it agrees with their beliefs or whatever. Well, imagine if we make good movies, like, Christians would flock to that, So I do think the money will start talking at some point. I don't know if that's going to be sooner or later. Hopefully not too late.
I have one last question, which I probably should have asked you at the beginning, but I just came to me and I'm curious. You're a creative soul at your heart. This is your job. It's amazing that you're getting paid for it. I understand the joy in that. Are you the kind of person who has like a little scratch pad with you and you're constantly taking notes about society, or using an app on your phone, or recording little voice memos to yourself when ideas come to you and when you're not at the desk, you're not at the workplace? How do you kind of collaborate or kind of collate them?
I don't know if it's a good habit or a bad habit, but I have our writers group chat constantly up on my phone, and then it's like, oh, idea, and you kind of send it. I just kind of send it off into the void, like, to all the writers, and let's let it fly and see if it turns into anything. Uh-huh. I did recently buy the little, police investigator notepad, because I wanted to, because I do feel like the phone distracts so much. I'm like, I have an idea, pull up my phone, and then all of a sudden I'm on Twitter. I'm like, why did I come here again? And I feel like there's a little bit more creative focus that happens when you're able to, like, actually take pencil and paper. Like, when we were editing the January 6th movie, I switched entirely from, like, digital notes and digital. I just grabbed a giant yellow notepad, and now I have all these full yellow notepads of, like, edit notes and joke ideas for that. And that worked great. Like, it was like I was able to lock in so much better without having all the distractions. So yeah, definitely just constantly. I tell the story sometimes. When my third son was born, my wife woke up at 3 a.m. She woke me up like, it's time to go to the hospital. And I jumped up and I wrote a joke about Benny Hinn down on my little paper that I had next to the bed, because I was like, oh, hold on, I just woke up from this dream. I had a headline idea. Like, she's like, we gotta go to the hospital. What are you doing? So yeah, but that's the mind of a writer, and especially the kind of comedy that we do, that's so, like, idea focused, lightning in a bottle, great headline idea. Like, a great headline idea is gold, right? So you can't forget it. You're constantly trying to come up with stuff.
That's funny. You just turned to your wife and said, honey, you knew who you married.
Now, you knew it, yeah. Well, no, she didn't, because when we got married, I wasn't a writer. I was a construction sales guy,
The old bait and switch. Well, it sounds like things are working out well. Kyle, thanks so much for joining the show. Of course, the new movie is January 6th, The Most Deadliest Day. You can find it at the Babylon Bee. You have to subscribe to the Babylon Bee. Just go to babylonbee.com. It is well worth it. You don't just get that. You get tons and tons of great original commentary, jokes, humor, satire, podcasts, you name it. It is there, all under that umbrella. Thanks so much for telling the jokes that other people don't want to, because we need them. And it's making life a little more bearable these days. So thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's it for the show this week. Again, thank you to Kyle Mann for joining the show. Do check out the Babylon Bee's work. It is second to none. And I can't let you all go without reminding you to check out HollywoodInToto.com. It is the right take on entertainment, much like this podcast. I update it daily with news, reviews, commentary, interviews with tastemakers and conservatives who are not getting a fair shake anywhere else, but they certainly do at my website. Check it out, HollywoodInToto.com. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at HollywoodInToto. I'll see you next time.